So we are going to jump straight into it today. And I have quite a juicy topic I want to talk about because this is something I am seeing online for a very long time now. I think we all are. And I want to talk about it in relation to relationships. So the examples I'm going to use today are very much around relationships, okay? Because I feel like I'm seeing it being used in a lot of relationships, either people I know, things I've seen online, clients who've come to me, other people I've been in contact with. And when I mean relationships, I don't just mean romantic relationships. I mean like friendships, family relationships, and other bits and pieces, like even career relationships, right? And I feel like the self-development space has been hijacked by social media and the wanting to label everybody with something to make ourselves feel better about how they treated us, because that's what we want to do, right? It's making us feel better about how they treated us, or how we allowed them to treat us, actually is more the other thing. But also, when we label somebody with something, we no longer have to take accountability. And what I'm seeing in this space over the last 5 years, and I see it very much in the younger generation coming through, I think it's hit some of ours as well. I feel like what I'm seeing with a lot of millennials is that we're stuck. We're like, oh, because we were the generation who were like, let's stop labeling everything. Like, sure, get it. We don't have to be labeled. Because we went through it in our teens. And what's happened now is that like we've gone into the self-development space. The younger generation have come in right behind us because of TikTok and Instagram. And we're now being fed all this information that they're being fed. And while I can see a lot of millennials trying to consciously understand, because that's where I'm at, what I'm seeing with younger generation, or even a few people like a few years younger than me, like 2-3 years younger than me, what I'm seeing is like a massive repivot to having to label everything about our lives and to use this information against people because we're not comfortable with sitting with our own accountability. And it's kind of coming back around to where the boomers are, of like they're not willing to take accountability for what they portrayed, but they had no consciousness around any of this. And yeah, I'm finding it really interesting right now in the space. And what's happening is we've become incredibly self-involved. And we've become incredibly, I don't want to say we're all narcissistic, but there's a massive amount of narcissistic tendencies that are being fed by these apps right now. And justification of how people treat one another. And what I also see in relationships is that TikToks and Instagrams are being sent to friends in microaggressive ways, but also as a way to emotionally manipulate and abuse others. And we're not actually learning to communicate. We're trying to hurt our other half or our friends by sending them reels to like get at the point that we're trying to make, to justify our actions or to justify our opinion and try and make ourselves right. And I feel like the removal of God or universe or spirit, whatever connotation you want to use and feels more comfortable for you, but the removal of a greater being, a higher perspective, a thing we could worship, and understood that we were in community together. So like the removal of the community, along with the removal of like the removal of the other and the worship of the other and the community of religion, has had a huge impact on later generations. Like atheism has become so big in the world, and how we've removed God from so much. What's happened is that we have become self-involved and made ourselves effectively the God of our own lives and of our own universe. And it's a really sad thing to see. And I don't necessarily agree with religions. I believe all religions were born from love, and then corrupt, powerful people came in and it got corrupted. I have that belief. Do I believe in God? Absolutely. Do I believe he's a man? no, I'm not sure. It's an energy. So like I don't have, but there is polarity to everything. So if there's a god, there's a goddess. And I truly do believe in that. And it's up to whoever what feels true to you for you to align with. But regardless of that, we have lost that community of having one focus, of one working toward point. You know, people back then used to pray and morally act a certain way because they wanted to get to heaven. Do I necessarily agree with all of the rules? No. But what I'm trying to say is that we had something to work towards, and we did it as a community. Church religions brought people together and brought community and wanting to help one another and understand one another and compassion. We have removed that from society over the last, particularly the last 30 years, I'd say. And it's only getting harder in this world to move through as a human, because we're now expected to be absolutely perfect. And we've just traded one girl reality in religion to another good girl reality in society. And what I'm seeing through all of this is how it's playing out in relationships and friends and relationships to everything and anything. And I do believe that we need a level of self-importance. And what I mean by that is I grew up as a people pleaser. I was the eldest of 5 kids. I was the eldest cousin. I was always the reliable one. I was the one who was, from a very young age, put in a, position of leadership, is the only way I can put that. I was always the girl who did all of her homework. I studied well. I did what I was told to do. I climbed the corporate ladder. I was always the friend that was like forgotten about, but then would come back when they needed something. Or the one who you could always count on will be there for you, no matter how badly you treated her. I was like a beaten dog at some point throughout my friendships in my life. Or I was the one everybody could keep at arm's length, but then would pull back in when they needed some comfort. And even in relationships, right? I carried everything in relationships. I carried the relationship, I carried the responsibility to ensure that we had date night, that presents were bought, that we would go to things, that we went on holidays, that we had time together, that we'd go away together, like along with all the emotional aspect of it and being chronically ill. And I've been there. I've been at the pit of being a people pleaser, where you take on too much in work and you're working constantly to 2 o'clock in the morning with no reward. I have been that human. That wasn't good for me because I had no boundaries in the wanting to help. And I had no understanding of what my values were as a person, but also I had no form of self-importance. I was just like, yeah, this makes me really uncomfortable, but you know what makes me more uncomfortable? Being on my own. Like, for me, it was a series of trade-offs of survival. And I saw myself as less. And, this idea of being selfless is beautiful in one way, but when you're doing it from a very empty cup and you're consistently doing it and you're never filling up your cup and you're never looking after yourself, there's a big difference. And then I think we go to the other polarity in selfishness. And I do feel like people who start off on their journey have to go into the selfish category for a while, because you have to become protective of who you are, because you're trying to figure yourself out. And you become overprotective of your energy, and you're not willing to have, to put yourself in situations because you're trying to heal. But the problem is we're getting stuck in this part and we're playing victim to it, and we are justifying our own self-importance. Whereas I was always really lucky because of my husband. I didn't get to stay very long in the selfish zone. He was like, this is not you. Like, I get where you're doing that, but put your big girl pants on and let's come back to balance. And I was really lucky in that way with him. And our relationship has only ever thrived because we have learned that all of this information online is not nuanced. It's all people spouting shit to sell you something, to make you feel bad about yourself, or to justify something that you've done wrong, or to allow you to shame and blame somebody else on the other side. And what I find so interesting about the internet because obviously I don't cultivate my feed and I'm not a big TikToker, so I have to go look for things. My feed, because of who I am, shows both sides of everything. I'll get one reel that's like, if they're not meeting your needs, they're an emotional abuser and they're using these phrases when they're talking to you. Or if you tell them that they're hurt and they go and justify it, they're manipulative and they're gaslighting you, right? And you're seeing this. First of all, absolute fucking bullshit. But we'll get to that later. And then on the next one, you're seeing if you if with your partner they say you hurt them, but what you were trying to do was explain yourself, then they're an emotional abuser and they don't care about you and they're not listening to you. And it's like, you will be validated in any way that you want to be, because this is what those apps do. You will be validated no matter what. But because I'm the type of person who likes to look at both sides of every story, my feed is cultivated very differently. So I get both. I get both of everything. And it's also incredibly annoying to be this empathetic, just FYI. It's actually a curse. Because it's really hard to cut people off when you have the empathy of understanding why they do things. But as somebody recently said to me, that doesn't mean it's still okay that they do things. And I was like, that's very fair. You can understand it, but you don't have to sit there and allow them to do it to you. And I was like, that's really interesting. But anyway, I digress. So, you know, the algorithm is going to give you what you want because that's how you've cultivated it. So you're going to continue to get this, like, effectively a version of negativity bias and making you feel vindicated, and you're passively aggressively sending those to people because you're trying to make a point and you're trying to make yourself right. And this is the thing. We have become so self-important and wanting to label everybody as something, not because we truly believe that person is narcissistic or an emotional abuser or any of the things you can think of in the world, gaslighter, you know, manipulator, all of those things. The reason you're looking for a label is because if you can find a label, you can pin all of the issues on them and take absolutely no accountability on your side. And one of the biggest things I see this in is cheating. I've seen so many relationships in my life where people have been cheated on. So when they first are broken up with, and let's say the person's like, look, I just don't see us together anymore, we're not working, or I think you deserve better, or we've got to a point now where we're so resentful of each other, it's not working. Like, we try to come back together, it's not working. And that person starts doing some work and it's like, okay, well, maybe there's stuff I need to look at within myself. The moment they find out that they were cheated on, boom, all of a sudden that person's a cheater and it's all their fault. And they're not willing to look at themselves because their thing is, well, because they strayed, that's their fault and that's on them. Absolutely. If somebody chooses to stray within a relationship, the decision to stray is on them. 100%. Cannot deny that. However, it takes two to tango. There are certain small minority, like a 1% of people in the world who are narcissistic and abusive enough to cheat because they just fucking want to and they love the idea of cheating on you. A lot of the time there's an insecurity of something going on within them, but also within the relationship that's consistently triggering them. They don't feel good, they don't feel worthy, so they go looking outside. That is accountability that needs to be taken on both sides. But 9 times out of 10, when you look at somebody who's cheated and their certain triggers have happened, it's the other partner who has not been listening to their needs, their wants, or their desires. If you've not been listening to them and understanding them, they feel misunderstood, they don't feel seen. That's why they strayed from their relationship. This is the same in so many different ways in relationships. But what I'm seeing is because we're getting the gratification and the validation from online keyboard warriors and therapists and life coaches who are like, if they do this, then they are that. And you're getting the justification. You're not willing to look at yourself because you don't want to blame yourself because that's fucking uncomfortable, right? That's nasty. Oh, I don't want any responsibility. It means I'm a bad person. When actually that's because you've portrayed it like they're a bad person and that would mean you're a bad person. That you're vindicated in some way by blaming it all on them. And we're all starting to see a lot more narcissism come to the fold, and not around actually people doing things to protect themselves in relationships. It's actually the other person who's playing the victim. And the moment you play victim, you're handing your power to somebody else and being like, that's yours, you use that, you look after me. What's happening is we've so much knowledge at our fingertips. So one of the things I'll talk about is like anxious avoidance attachment in relationships, like your love languages, your love attachment. And people are reading these books and being like, oh my God, that's me, that's what I am. I'm a anxious attachment. And I've ended up in a relationship with an avoidant. So I'm going to go totter inside now and I'm going to tell him he's an avoidant. And then I'm going to say to him, well, I'm an anxious. So this is what I need. What happens in that moment is we become so self-involved, and our thing is like, well, we've told them what we need now and what I desire and what I need from them, and they need to give me, it's this entitlement, they need to give me in the relationship because I'm anxious. So the next time we have a breakdown of communication and he's avoidant and he goes to leave, he's an emotional abuser and a gaslighter because he didn't give me what I needed in that moment. I see it time and time again. Right? It's literally happening in front of our eyes. We've got to the point where we're using these love languages and these wants and desires to literally tell our partners that if they don't give us what they want, I'm going to label them as X, Y, and Z, and there's something wrong with them. So let me tell you a story. Shockingly enough, up until the point where I'm completely pushed to my wit's end. So when I have to be very far pushed in a relationship to get to the point where I become avoidant or I detach, right? But most of the time I'm an anxious attachment style. My husband is more of the avoidant attachment style. And I also believe that people can fit in and out different ones depending on the person that's in front of them, depending on where they are in their lives, what's going on for them, okay? But most of the time that's who I am. And I am very aware of that. When we have a breakdown of communication or we have an argument, years ago, I couldn't deal with Liam leaving the room. If the argument hadn't been finished or if it got too intense, but from childhood, I grew up in a household where an argument would start. It would never come to fruition. You were told, let's just drop it. One person would walk out of the room and you could be guaranteed whether it was the same day, 2 days, a week later, a month later, it was going to explode again. And that energy in the house we felt the whole time. It felt like an anxious feeling sitting in the pit of my stomach. I wasn't even involved in it. I would just see it. So I can't deal with somebody leaving an argument and leaving the room and not coming, like, to come back and start again. I can't deal with that. I used to need closure in that moment. I've done a lot of work on myself. So when Liam would try and leave the room, I would lose it. I would get so upset. I would get a lot more angry. I would be like, I need you to stay here. Like, I've been there, right? Now, this is before I did any of the work. And I completely understood. I didn't at the time, but I do now. I completely understood where that reaction came from because it brought that feeling back up in my body of like, well, he's going to only come back in a few hours and start this up again, and I can't deal with that. I need the closure. Liam needs space to process and calm down before he can come back and repair. I need the touch and the talking through and all of this. And what was happening was we were literally going around in circles in our relationship when we would talk about it. And he's like, we've talked about this 100 times. I can't talk to you about this anymore. Like, we're not getting anywhere because I was still so emotional and I hadn't allowed it to kind of escape, and he couldn't process quick enough because he wasn't being given his space or his time. By today's standards of TikTok advice, it's the only way I can say it, he would be an emotional abuser for walking away or a gaslighter, and I would be something else, I'm sure, if we looked it up. And he wouldn't be fulfilling my needs and I wouldn't be fulfilling his needs, and we'd be the worst couple in the world and we shouldn't be together because he can't give me what I want and I won't give him what he wants. We have come so far as a couple that, like, yes, there are still times when we have an argument and that feeling will arise in me, but I know he needs the space. And he'll go, I'm going upstairs now, I'm closing the door, and I'll come to talk to you later. When Liam comes back, he does not have another argument with me. It is, hey, what unfolded was not cool. We need to look at why we want to repair this. And it's the same with me. And sure, I have to do different things to work through it for myself. Usually I'm a verbal processor, or like I can write it out, or I need to go for a walk and calm my nervous system down before I can even come back and repair. Well, staying in it was never going to repair it, because I can't see the wood from the trees, and nor could he. By giving the two of us space, even though my body still at times gets very triggered by that idea of the space, it's not me giving him what he wants. Actually, I do need that, even as an anxious attachment style, because constantly giving into my attachment only makes me worse, because then I become dependent on him having to stay with me. Now, there are times where we can kind of leave something and sit beside one another, where I can still like have touch, so that I know he's okay and I'm okay. There are times that we can do that, but there's sometimes that we can't. And I've had to go off and deal with my aspect in it, but also he's had to go off and do the piece where he's like, I still love you. I'm not going anywhere. I just need to remove myself from this. Now, I might not say it exactly like that every single time, but when he did at the beginning, I don't need to hear that from him now. When he's like, I'm actually done now, I'm not getting triggered of like he's leaving me. I'm like, oh, what he means in this moment is like his brain is done. He needs to step away. And it's really important that we understand that about each other, because otherwise people are like, oh, well, you're not compatible. But I don't agree that two anxious attachment styles are compatible. I don't agree that two avoidance styles are compatible. And anxious avoidance, it depends on your day. So like, it's about learning more about yourself, but also if you want the relationship to change, there is a massive part where, one, you need to start learning to let go of things, but also when you come back to repair, it's about the why on both sides. And there's a difference between, so what I mean by the why is like understanding why your partner felt that way. Okay? And it's about them coming and wanting to understand why you felt that way. So whether they hurt one another. And you're like, well, you hurt me because this is how it felt when you said that. And it's about them being like, well, I felt hurt when you weren't listening. It's not about being like, well, you did this and it hurt me, so like you have to take responsibility, because if you don't, you're like a manipulator and you're invalidating my experience. No, they're not. They're saying there was hurt on both sides. You're wanting to be right, and they're being like, okay, I can see how that would have hurt. Whether they apologise or not is up to them, because I also don't think apologies should be fucking constant in relationships, but here we are. But if they're like, well, okay, I can see why you were hurt there. Well, actually, what really hurt me that led to that reaction was that you said this. And it's about being like, okay, right, I triggered that in you and you triggered this in me, but you weren't being malicious. It's just how it came across. Because I feel like we've got to a point now in relationships where it's like, if they don't validate my experience and my reality and my feelings were hurt, well, then they are X, Y, and Z, and they're really, really not good for me in a relationship. And it's like, actually, sometimes you're going to disagree on the fact that both of you were hurt. But also, they shouldn't have to apologize to breathe. Like, I have a very direct husband. My husband will say it just exactly how it says in his brain. He just comes out with it. He's got better with me because of how he knows I react. But that's not his responsibility to have to do that either. He chooses to do it at certain points because at times he's like, well, if I say it in this way, I know it will get through to her quicker than triggering her and then being like, well, fuck, what do I do now? And vice versa. I know how to say certain things to him and not get triggered or trigger him. But we have to be able to be direct with each other, because also we have to be honest. We have to be honest about our experience. We have to be honest about things. But also, if you keep getting triggered because your partner doesn't have the capacity to give you something, that's on you. That's not their fault. And this is the huge piece that I'm seeing in the industry right now, is like this whole justification of why you think that your other half should be your be all and end all, and that they should give you everything that you want. Okay, so if they give me everything that I want, how can they give what they want to themselves? Because it does come back to capacity, right? Like, my husband as many will know, does so much for me. He books the holidays, he drives me everywhere. I can drive, and I do like to drive by myself, but a lot of the time he's like, oh yeah, I'm not doing anything, I'll drive you, you can have a drink. Like, he will look after things for me. He does a lot of the bills around the house. He does, he takes out the bins, he does X, Y, and Z. There are some times that he doesn't have the capacity to give that. So at the moment, he's working loads. So he has his business up and running. He's also working full time like I am. He's also trying to look after his health. He signed up for this like crazy, ridiculous thing in September that he's now training for. My husband is exhausted. Bless him. He is really exhausted right now. And he's a lot going on. Most evenings, he works till really late. So the compromise there at the moment is that at about 6 o'clock, I'll either have dinner cooked so we can just go for a walk, or I'll cook once we get back. But we go for a walk together, and then we'll eat dinner together, and we will watch an episode of something. That currently, in this moment in time, is the only time I get with him in the evenings. And this happened years ago with a different company. About 4 or 5 years ago, when this originally happened, I used to get so triggered by the fact that I was like, but I want more time. I'm lonely. I'm left on my own. Why are you working this late? La, la, la. Now, also, I do believe in workplace boundaries, but, he also needs to get the work done because he needs to keep his job. So, like, I get the trade-off. I don't get triggered by that because the time he spends with me, he's with me, he's present with me, we chat about our day, we have a bit of fun. Also, we have weekends together, right? But he always sets aside time for me. Me having a need of wanting more time with him right now is completely unfair of me to ask as a wife. Like, one of the days last week I went to bed at 9 o'clock because I was just like, there's nothing I want to watch. I'm just scrolling on my phone. I'm bored. I don't really want to read. I'm having one of those days and nothing is working for me. I'm just going to go to bed. And jokingly I turned to him and he was like, oh, why are you going to bed so early? It's like 9:30. And I'm like, well, I'm lonely. And he's like, I'm really sorry. I was like, I'm actually joking. I was like, there's nothing I want to watch downstairs. One of my seasons is released now, but there was nothing. I was in that in between when there was nothing on, and I was like, I'm actually tired, so I'm actually just going to go to bed. It was nothing on him. I didn't go to bed in a bad mood. I didn't go to bed being dickish with him and being like, well, yeah, but I have nothing else to be doing. Like, I wasn't like that. I was like, okay, cool, you come to bed whenever you want to. Years ago, I'd have done it very differently. And that's not okay, because that's putting extra pressure on him when he's giving me what he can in this moment. I cannot be his be all and end all. The other piece on top of that is, if having to spend every waking moment with one another is a requirement for me in a relationship, my other half will never do anything with their lives. Because it's not a requirement for me. That's unfair to ask of. He has goals, he has dreams. And how I put it to a friend recently was like, I know I'm the centre of my husband's universe. And he is the centre of my universe. But there's a whole universe outside of one another. He might be the centre, but there's so much more going on in that universe that is mine. And sure, the relationship comes into the fold with it, but it's the same with him. Like, he wants to get his own business up and running. And will that be great for us as a couple? Absolutely. But it's not about me. It's about him and what he wants and his dreams and his wants and his desires. And it's the same on my side. We've become so selfish with being like, but this is what I need from you. And it's like, well, actually, what are you not giving to yourself in that moment? Because yes, if Liam wasn't giving me any time during the week and then was making an issue that I want to spend time with him at the weekend, we'd be having a very different conversation. However, if I don't see him at all during the week and then I get a Saturday or a Sunday or both days with him, well, isn't that wonderful? Because he has the time and he can be with me. And there's some weeks where like we're literally passing in the night. Like, he's working a lot. I see him for the hour or two. Then the weekend I have bits and pieces on. Like this weekend, I was busy most of this weekend. I didn't actually get a lot of time with him. We had our anniversary together. But from what we're used to, we didn't get a lot of time. And I haven't really properly seen him all last week and this week. And I'm in the office tomorrow. And then hopefully by the weekend coming in, we'll plan something together. I'm not going to be shitty about it. It's life. It's seasons. And that gets to be okay. And that doesn't mean he's not fulfilling a need. Like, relationships go in and out of seasons. And I see the same in sex, right? I see this with couples all of the time, where depending on where you're at in your life and how you're feeling about yourself and what's going on and how stressed you are, because there are also a form of love languages, which are, I did a podcast on them a few months ago, and it was really good on like the different kind of invitations into your own sexuality, and you can flip between them all, right? The book is here, they're the blueprints. So your blueprints of pleasure, effectively. And each one tells you something different about yourself. And not everybody's just sexual, and not everybody's sensual, and not everybody's a shapeshifter or into kink or BDSM, or they have little bits of them. Like, I'm a shapeshifter, so I can change based on my hormones, based on my partner, based on what they're at, based on where, you know, what's going on in the weather, what's going on for me. I can shapeshift between all of them depending on what I'm feeling. However, there are people out there who, let's say, are sensual. So my husband's highly on the sensual list. And those who are sensual, if they are incredibly stressed and have a massive to-do list, they cannot check out of their head and into their body. It is physically impossible for them to do that without help or them clearing off that list. Okay? There are other people out there who need the kink. But if you're with somebody who's a shapeshifter, but the shapeshifter at the moment is not into the kink, but is into more sexual or into more like sensual play, well, then the person who's into kink is like, well, I want to go straight in, no kissing with this, but you're sensual and I really don't want to, you know, you're going to have these times in relationships. But I've had a lot of clients come to me over the last few years about like when their partner isn't feeling it or they're not feeling sex, okay? And what can happen a lot of the times, the other person gets triggered because they believe it's about them. Or they become incredibly self-involved and are like, well, you have to give it to me. Or I really want it. And you start nagging for it constantly. And what's happening is, first of all, you're giving your partner the fucking ick and they're like, absolutely not. But the other piece is like, you're shaming them and judging them from where they're at in their lives. It's not about you. It's very different if it is actually about you. If something happened between the two of you and their confidence is shaken and all that, that's obviously very different because it's something you both have to work through. But if your partner is in a space right now where it's not available to them, sure, you can definitely try. The rejection doesn't feel nice, first of all. So you're going to have to be able to look at that within yourself because you can't project that on them, particularly when they put their boundaries down of like, I'm just not available for sex right now. Like, it's just, I can't get myself there. I'm feeling this way. This has happened to me. This is what's been going on. Work is stressful. Life is stressful. Maybe they went through something really traumatic, right? Which can happen. Or after childbirth. You see it a lot with women after childbirth because they don't know who they are and their identity has shifted. So for them, it can, like, husbands are like, oh, but the doctor said after 8 weeks we can have sex now. And she's sitting there being like, I'm currently a milkmaid. I have no idea who I am. I'm not working. I can't go to the gym. I can't see my friends. I have the baby constantly latched to me. I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. But you want to have sex just because we can. Like, it's unfair on your partner. And people get triggered by that. And then they start blaming and shaming their partner and trying to coerce them, which is a form, personally, of intermarital non-consent, effectively. Or interrelational non-consent, trying to, like, hoodwink them into, or breaking them down, like nagging them so much that they're like, fine, I'll give you what you want. Like, that's non-consensual. Like, I'm sorry, but that's what that is. Even if they choose to go, fine, it's okay, let's go. You did that from an emotionally manipulative place. And that's non-consensual. And this is what I'm getting at with this idea of like, we become so self-involved that if our partner can't give us something, we instantly say, we label them, we start telling them that they're not good enough, that we're not getting what we need from them. But actually, we have to be able to give things to ourselves. We have to be able to look at that piece that's being triggered and being like, where can I take accountability in this and ownership? And where can I sit with myself? Because I do see it happening in this space. I see it so fucking often. Like, it's been a bright shining light in my eye for people for so long now, where we're listening to stuff on the internet, we're seeing it, and then all of a sudden it's like, you can't give me what I want, so you're a bad person. And the reason why I'm labeling you with this is because it makes me feel that I don't have to look at myself because to do that would be really uncomfortable and would make me the bad person. So I'm right and you're wrong, and you need to go and be this person, because it's easier to be a victim to my own narrative than it is actually to possibly be a perpetrator in my own life. I see it, and as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it, because I'm so bored of people being so self-involved that they believe that the world revolves around them and that the only people who are hurt are them. And I've had it come up in my own relationships recently where people aren't willing to look at how their actions led to a certain consequence, but instead come to me and make me feel like the bad person because I was choosing to protect others because of what happened. And sure, and the worst part was I was actually already open and honest, and I had set boundaries previous to that. But because the boundaries didn't suit them, I became the villain in their narrative because it suited them. Can I take ownership and an accountability over an aspect of it? Absolutely. Should I have probably cut this person a long time ago? Absolutely. But because I can see things from both sides, I still had a lot of empathy. But when I was told empathy without boundaries is self-abandonment, I was like, well, actually, that makes sense. But I see this where people just want to be told that they're right, and they will continue to speak at you the same story, the same justification, the same thing over and over and over and over again until you just start believing it because it's easier. That's gaslighting. That's breaking somebody down. When you start to change people's reality, and this doesn't mean that everybody's reality is real, right? Because I also see this where it's like, well, in my reality, this is what happened. Sure, that was in your reality, and their reality is very different. So the reality is somewhere in the middle. But can you get curious enough to ask the why, to want to come back and repair? Or are you just wanting to be told that you're the person in the right because you're trying to feed something within you that has not been fed since being a kid? Because a lot of the time what we're looking for in partners is what we didn't get from our parents when we were children. When we're doing it from that space of wanting to be vindicated, we're doing it but that doesn't make it okay. I take over accountability for a lot of things in my life. I take a lot of ownership and a lot of responsibility, even where I don't need to. Does it hurt me that other people won't come to the table and take accountability? But actual real accountability, don't just spout the counselling words at me. Absolutely. Do they really want to come and repair and understand why I'm hurt? Amazing. But 9 times out of 10, that's not how it's going. We've become so self-involved because we've lost our village. We've lost the wanting to help other people. And the only thing that we can feel is our own hurt and our own validation. So we've lost the whole and we've become the I. I've learned to have boundaries. I have learned to show up for myself in a different way. I align myself with my values. And people who don't align with those, well, that's unfortunate. That my relationship with my husband is easy. And it's not hard because I don't believe we need to suffer in relationships for them to be good, because I think that's a thing we see in the world of like, you need to suffer to be successful. If you're not suffering in a relationship, you're not working for it. I don't agree with that. But I do believe that relationships are work, and it's work not just between the two of you, it's work separate and together, and being able to take accountability and coming back and repairing from that space and being like, I can take accountability over what I did there. That was not okay. And I just like, this self-involvement is going to have such an impact on us as humans, but also for the younger generations, because we see it with men in power. And I don't just mean men, I mean people, but predominantly like the really successful men who have a lot of money. And, you know, Elon Musk started off with a dream to help people with solar power, and he had all of these great visions. And then through power and greed and wanting to be seen, because that's what is really playing out, is his 8-year-old child wanting to be seen, we see the man we see today. It's the same with Trump, right? At the end of the day, Trump grew up in a way and was taught how to do business in a way that was like, I don't see anybody outside of my own wealth. or outside of my own family as worthy of wealth, and my friends. And what's happened now is like he will do anything to make himself relevant, because it's about him, because his inner child needs to be seen and adored and loved for who he is. But he has lost his way, because he has, even though like I know he's a Republican and apparently has faith in God, like there's nothing godly about that man, because he's lost his way. And it's about more of control than it is actually the whole and actually helping people. And yes, I know he uses certain words to say, oh, I'm helping making America great again, but we can't see that. That's not what's happening. And I just really feel like this is something I wanted to come and speak on, because so many of my clients and my friends and different people are going through this, and the algorithm is feeding this idea that we're the only important one in this world, and it's not true. And I do think people can lose themselves in toxic relationships, and that doesn't mean that you have to stay there, because there's a big difference. But there's also a piece where we have got to start looking and stop labeling people for everything and anything, and start deciding to really take accountability of our own stuff and to really actually heal. Because healing isn't all sage and cacao and grounding. Like, healing's actually down to like, how can I choose differently? The universe or life doesn't take away what's not for you. It just keeps giving you the lesson over and over and over again to exhaust you time and time again until you choose differently. And if you find yourself in relationships always ending up the victim or the hurt one or the abused one, I'm not saying that you're not being abused in those relationships, but what I am saying is, why do you keep going into those scenarios? Why do you keep putting yourself in there? What part of the victim story is portraying something in your life? It could be a story you heard when you were younger. Is it about you, within you, and how you're communicating in the relationship that's calling that out in somebody else? Because they're a mirror, right? And again, this isn't to blame victims, by the way. Abuse is nuance. Being cheated on is nuance. Being able to provide needs, wants, and desires to your partner all the time is nuanced, because nobody can give it all at one go. It's unfair. So like, I'm trying to like get it all in one, and it's quite hard. But what I mean is, like, if you keep ending up in really sucky relationship, lazy and doesn't do anything, and he's always siding with his family over you, or his family are really toxic, or you know, he doesn't do anything around the house, or he's constantly out drinking with his mates, so what within you keeps calling those in? I think that kind of more makes it. Obviously extreme abuse situations is very different. But even saying that, I've had friends who've been through incredibly violent relationships and violent things in their lives, and when they've actually come out of the other side of doing the healing work, not that they ever say they deserve it, because they know that they don't, and what that person did was not okay, but they have come out the other side to be like, I understand what parts of me called them into my life for me. There's a reason, and I get it now. And that doesn't make it okay, and it doesn't make me a bad person, and it doesn't make me take the blame, but it shows parts of myself where I can take the accountability to change so it doesn't happen again. And I think that takes a very strong person to do that work, and to be able to look at themselves in that way, and look at the relationship in that way, while also holding somebody else accountable, but looking for their own accountability. And yeah, I think a change has to come, because if not, we're going to be so separated by the eye. We're going to end up in awful relationships, or we're going to end up with a whole lot of people who are so self-involved that they can only be involved with people who literally would give up their lives for them, which is not healthy. Or we're going to end up with a whole generation of people who can't do relationships, and that's incredibly terrifying to me. And yeah, I just wanted to come on and speak about that, because it's something so live right now. So if anybody was incredibly triggered by this episode and would like to work on things with me, if you're struggling with your relationship, if there's things coming up and you felt this in your body, I would highly recommend reaching out, booking into a one-to-one session with me, and we can go through this in a very gentle way, because at the end of the day, we are here to relate to one another. It's one of the biggest things humans were put on this earth to do. It's not wholly about the I, it's about the village. And we need to start bringing the village back into our lives and into the center of our parts of our universe, because our partner should not be our be all and end all. And it's unfair to put that kind of pressure and expectation on another person when you can't give it for yourself and you don't have others outside who can give you aspects of it. So yeah, if you are struggling with this right now, if anything resonated, I do have one-to-one spots open at the moment, and I would love, it can be like a one-off call, we can do a stream of them, whatever you're looking for. I can help build a package around for you, depending on what you're looking at. But I would love to help you with this, because I feel like it does change lives, and we work with the body as well as learning to lean into accountability, as well as like our own feminine essence and who we came here to be, along with our own values and beliefs, and uncovering them too. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I hope everybody has a beautiful day, and I'll talk to you soon.